A 22-year-old farm boy from Illinois sits in a cockpit, watching his friends disappear into a storm-black sky. It's 5:53 a.m., October 5th, 1943. Robert Duncan has never killed anyone. In 30 minutes, that will change. And when it does, he'll break something the Japanese believed was unbreakable. For 18 months, American pilots have been dying, not because they lack courage, not because they lack skill, but because they're flying the wrong airplane against an enemy that seems untouchable. The Mitsubishi Zero has terrorized every pilot from Pearl Harbor to the Philippines. It's faster, it climbs higher, it turns tighter. American doctrine is simple. If a Zero gets on your tail, run. Don't fight. Just pray you make it home. But this morning is different, because Duncan isn't flying a Wildcat. He's flying something new, something the Japanese don't know exists yet. And hidden in the belly of his fighter are secrets stolen from a bog in Alaska, secrets that will help destroy an empire. This is the story of how America turned the tables in the Pacific, how a captured enemy fighter, a Medal of Honor recipient's advice, and a farm boy's courage combined to create the deadliest aircraft of World War II. This is the story of the Grumman F6F Hellcat, and it begins with a dead pilot in a frozen marsh. To understand what Robert Duncan was about to do, you need to understand what American pilots faced in 1942. The Mitsubishi A6M Zero wasn't just a good fighter, it was a revolution. Japanese engineers had done something remarkable. They'd built a carrier-based fighter that could outperform land-based aircraft. A plane so light and agile, it seemed to mock the laws of physics. The numbers were terrifying. Against Chinese pilots, the Zero achieved a kill ratio of 12-1. Before America even entered the war, 36 Zeros engaged 60 British aircraft over Ceylon and destroyed 27 of them. They lost a single plane. At Pearl Harbor, 78 Zeros escorted the bombers that shattered the Pacific Fleet. Only 9 went down, mostly to anti-aircraft fire. In air-to-air combat, they were nearly untouchable. American pilots learned quickly. The lessons were written in blood. Don't turn with it. The Zero could outturn anything America flew. If you tried to dogfight, you'd die. Don't climb with it. The Zero would climb above you, stall you out, and dive for the kill. Just run. Dive away. Use your armor. Hope your engine holds. Hope you reach your carrier before the Zero catches you. Hope. That was all American pilots had in 1942. Hope in the Grumman F4F Wildcat, a tough, reliable fighter that was outmatched in every measurable way. Wildcat pilots survived by refusing to fight on Japanese terms. They developed the thatch weave, a defensive scissors maneuver where wingmen protected each other. They worked in pairs. They hit and ran. But survival isn't victory. By mid-1942, Navy planners knew they needed something better. The problem was, they were fighting blind. The Zero's performance specifications were classified. Its design philosophy was unknown. Pilots who survived could describe what it did, but not how it did it. They couldn't identify weaknesses because they didn't know if any existed. Then fate intervened. June 4th, 1942. Dutch Harbor, Alaska. A 19-year-old Japanese pilot named Tadayoshi Koga takes off from the carrier Ryujo. His mission is simple: attack American positions, draw attention away from the main Japanese thrust toward Midway. During the raid, Koga's Zero takes ground fire. Not much, just enough. Oil begins leaking from his engine. He turns toward Akutan Island, 20 miles east, where the Japanese have designated an emergency landing strip. From the air, it looks perfect. Long grass, flat terrain, ideal for a wheels-down landing. It's a trap. Beneath the grass lies a bog, soft mud hidden by vegetation. When Koga lowers his landing gear and touches down, the wheels sink immediately. The Zero flips onto its back and slides to a stop in the marsh. Koga's neck breaks on impact. He's 19 years old. He dies instantly. He'll never know what his death means for the war. His wingmen circle overhead. They have orders: destroy any downed Zero to prevent capture, standard procedure. But they can't be certain Koga is dead. The canopy is intact. The aircraft looks undamaged except for being upside down. They circle twice. They hope their friend survived. They turn back toward the carrier. The Zero sits in the bog for 5 weeks. Rain falls on it. Alaskan fog wraps around it. Birds land on its overturned belly. No one comes. Music shift. Discovery. July the 10th, 1942. A Navy patrol plane piloted by Lieutenant William Thies flies over the Aleutians. His crew chief, Albert Knack, spots something strange below, a gray shape in the marsh. They circle lower. It's an aircraft. Japanese markings visible even through the mud. Within days, a salvage team arrives. They find Koga's body still in the cockpit. They bury him nearby with military honors. Then they begin extracting the Zero from the mud. The recovery takes weeks. Equipment must be brought in. The aircraft must be raised carefully without causing damage. But by early August, the Zero is on a ship bound for San Diego. Navy mechanics at North Island work around the clock. The damage is surprisingly minor. The tail needs straightening. Wingtips need work. Propeller requires repairs. Landing gear must be rebuilt. But the engine is intact. The airframe is sound. The flight controls function. Within weeks, they have a flyable Zero. Dramatic pause. September 20th, 1942. Lieutenant Commander Eddie Sanders climbs into the cockpit of the restored aircraft and takes off for the first of 24 test flights. For 25 days, Sanders pushes the Zero to its limits. He measures everything, documents everything, and what he discovers will change the war. The Zero isn't invincible. It's brilliant. But it's built around a fatal compromise. Japanese engineers sacrificed everything for performance. Everything. No armor protects the pilot. No self-sealing material lines the fuel tanks. The airframe is light to the point of fragility. Hit a Zero with a solid burst of .50 caliber fire, and it comes apart. Set its fuel tanks ablaze, and the pilot has no chance. But Sanders finds something else, something exploitable. Above 200 knots, the Zero's ailerons become almost impossible to move. At 250 knots, the aircraft can barely roll. It rolls more easily to the left than right, probably due to propeller torque, and the engine's float-type carburetor cuts out under negative acceleration. If a Zero tries to follow an American fighter into a steep dive, its engine sputters and dies. These weaknesses aren't theoretical. They're exploitable. An American pilot who knows about them can escape. He can dive away at high speed where the Zero's roll rate falls off. He can roll hard right, forcing the Zero into its weaker maneuver. He can push into negative G, knowing the Zero's engine will cut out. The information is compiled into intelligence reports and distributed throughout the fleet. Pilots memorize the findings. Dive away, roll right. Negative G, don't turn, don't climb, exploit the weaknesses. But there's a problem. The information comes too late to influence the design of America's next great fighter. That aircraft is already flying. The Grumman F6F Hellcat has been on the drawing board since before Pearl Harbor. Leroy Grumman and his chief designers know they need something bigger, faster, more powerful than the Wildcat. Something that can climb better and roll faster. Something that protects its pilots. But they don't have hard numbers on the Zero's capabilities. They only have reports from pilots who fought it and survived. Then those pilots start coming home. April 21st, 1942. The White House, Lieutenant Commander Edward Butch O'Hare receives the Medal of Honor. 2 months earlier, he single-handedly attacked 9 Japanese bombers threatening the carrier Lexington. His wingman's guns had jammed. The rest of his flight was out of position. O'Hare was alone. He attacked anyway. In 4 minutes, he shot down 5 bombers and damaged a 6th, using just 60 rounds per kill. A display of marksmanship that amazed even experienced pilots. President Roosevelt asks him a question that will shape American naval aviation. What do pilots need most in a new fighter? O'Hare doesn't hesitate. A plane that will go upstairs faster. Something that can climb. The next day, O'Hare visits the Grumman factory in Bethpage, Long Island. He spends hours with the engineers, describing what it's like to fight the Japanese. He tells them about the Zero's climb rate, its turning ability, its acceleration. He tells them where the Wildcat falls short, where pilots feel most vulnerable. He tells them what American pilots need to survive. Grumman listens. They redesign the cockpit, mounting it higher in the fuselage. They slope the forward fuselage down toward the engine, giving the pilot an unobstructed view over the nose. They enlarge the canopy into a bubble shape. 4 days after O'Hare's visit, the Bureau of Aeronautics makes another critical decision. They order Grumman to replace the planned engine with something more powerful, the Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp. 2,000 horsepower, 18 cylinders in 2 rows, the most powerful engine available for American fighters. The redesign happens fast. Grumman has been building Navy aircraft since 1931. They know what the service needs. June 26, 1942. The first prototype takes flight, July 30th. The redesigned prototype with the Double Wasp engine flies for the first time. The transformation is remarkable. The XF6F3 is 25% faster than the original design. It climbs at 3,300 feet per minute, faster than any American fighter before it. Top speed, 375 miles per hour, and it's built like a tank. 212 pounds of armor protect the cockpit and engine. Steel plates surround the pilot's seat, bullet-resistant windshield, self-sealing fuel tanks that swell shut when punctured, preventing the catastrophic fires that kill Zero pilots. 6 50-caliber M2 Browning machine guns, 3 on each wing. Together, they can put out nearly 80 rounds per second. Against the unarmored Zero, that firepower is devastating. Leroy Grumman's philosophy is clear. Give the pilot every advantage, protect him, arm him, let him survive his mistakes, and come back to fight again. The first production F6F3 rolls off the assembly line in October 1942. Grumman builds a new factory specifically for Hellcat production. Steel is scarce during wartime, so they buy scrap metal from the demolished 2nd Avenue Elevated Railway in New York City. The joke spreads through the fleet. The Hellcats are practically made of subway tracks. By early 1943, the planes reach operational squadrons. By summer, they're heading to the Pacific. The Hellcats' first combat mission comes on August 31, 1943, Marcus Island, less than 1,000 miles from Tokyo. The raiders catch the Japanese by surprise. They destroy 8 bombers on the ground. But there are no Japanese fighters. The kill everyone is waiting for, Hellcat versus Zero, hasn't happened yet. That test is coming, 5 weeks later, at Wake Island, in the rain, in the dark. Robert Duncan climbs through the storm clouds, engine howling, instruments barely visible in the pre-dawn blackness. He's part of a fighter sweep ahead of the main strike force. Their job, clear the sky of Japanese fighters before the bombers arrive. Duncan has advantages pilots earlier in the war could only dream of. His commanding officer, operations officer, and gunnery officer have all tested and flown the captured Zero. They've shared everything with every pilot in the squadron. Duncan knows the Zero's weaknesses. He knows how to exploit them, and he's flying an aircraft designed from the ground up to beat it. Rain hammers his canopy. Visibility is nearly zero. Duncan flies on instruments, trusting his training, trusting the 1,800 horsepower engine pulling him through the clouds. Then he breaks through. Above the storm, the sky is clear. Stars glitter overhead. The eastern horizon glows with first light, and there, silhouetted against that glow, is a Japanese Zero. The Zero pilot hasn't seen him. Duncan has position, surprise, altitude, everything a fighter pilot could ask for. He pushes the stick forward and dives. The Hellcat accelerates faster than any aircraft Duncan has ever flown. The Double Wasp roars. The airspeed climbs, 300 knots, 350, 400. The Zero grows larger in his gun sight. Duncan squeezes the trigger. 6 50-caliber machine guns erupt. Tracers reach across the sky. Bright lines of fire in the pre-dawn darkness. The Zero comes apart under the impact. Duncan sees pieces fly off, sees the aircraft begin to tumble, sees it disappear below, trailing smoke. 1 kill, his first. But there are more Zeros in the sky. Duncan spots a second one below, turning hard to engage another Hellcat. The Japanese pilot hasn't seen Duncan diving toward him. He's focused on his target, committed to his attack. At the last moment, the Zero pilot sees Duncan coming. He breaks off his attack and pulls into a vertical climb, straight up. It's a tactic that's killed dozens of American pilots. Japanese pilots have perfected it. You lure a wildcat into a climbing fight. The Zero outclimbs anything in the American inventory. When the wildcat stalls out and falls away, you roll over and dive for the kill. Simple, deadly, reliable. The pilot executing this maneuver is Warrant Officer Toshiyuki Sueda. He has 9 American kills to his name, 9 pilots who made the mistake of trying to climb with him. He has every reason to believe it will work again. But Duncan isn't flying a wildcat. Music builds. The Hellcat follows Sueda into the climb. Its 2,000 horsepower engine claws at the sky. Its massive wings bite into the thin air. The aircraft doesn't stall, it doesn't fall away, it keeps climbing, gaining on the Zero with every second. Sueda reaches the top of his arc and rolls over, expecting to see the American fighter falling away below him, helpless, an easy kill. Instead, he sees the Hellcat right behind him, climbing, gaining, guns coming to bear. Duncan presses the trigger. The Hellcat bucks as 6 guns fire simultaneously. Tracers converge on the Zero. Sueda's aircraft comes apart in midair. The fuselage separates from the wings. Fire erupts from the fuel tanks. Debris scatters across the sky. Duncan flies through the wreckage and keeps climbing. 2 Zeros destroyed in rapid succession. The first Hellcat kills against the aircraft that terrorized the Pacific for 18 months, and one of those kills was a 9 victory. WWII, Ace, one of Japan's experienced combat pilots. The message is clear. The Zero's reign is over. News of Duncan's victory spreads through the fleet. The Hellcat can climb with a Zero. The Hellcat can kill a Zero. The rules have changed. Over the next 8 months, the kill ratios become impossible to ignore. November 23, 1943. Tarawa. Hellcats engage Japanese fighters over 2 days of brutal combat. Lieutenant Ralph Hanks shoots down 5 Zeros in 5 minutes, becoming an instant ace. Final tally, 30 Zeros destroyed, 1 Hellcat lost, 30-1. December 4, 1943, Kwajalein, 91. Hellcats engage 50 Zeros in one of the largest air battles of the Pacific War. 28 Zeros destroyed, 2 Hellcats lost, 14-1. Something fundamental has shifted. The Zero is no longer the hunter, it's becoming the prey. But the true measure of the Hellcat's dominance comes in June 1944. Music shift, epic, the Battle of the Philippine Sea. American forces are pushing toward the Mariana Islands, Saipan, Tinian, Guam. If the Americans capture them, B-29 bombers will be within range of Tokyo. The strategic bombing campaign that will devastate Japanese cities can begin. The Japanese know this. Admiral Toyota declares that the fate of the empire rests on the coming battle. He commits nearly every available carrier and aircraft to stopping the American advance. June 19, 1944. 10 a.m. American radar detects the first wave of Japanese aircraft approaching from the west. The Japanese have launched over 300 aircraft in 4 waves. The Hellcats are waiting. Lieutenant Alexander Vratsiu is flying combat air patrol when the call comes. Bogies inbound, large formation, all fighters intercept. Vratsiu pushes his throttle forward and climbs. He's 25 years old, from East Chicago, Indiana. He learned to fly from Butch O'Hare himself. O'Hare made him his wingman, taught him everything about aerial combat. O'Hare was killed 7 months earlier. But his lessons live on. As Vratsiu climbs, his supercharger malfunctions. He can't get above 20,000 feet. The Japanese bombers are coming in at 20,000 feet. Any other pilot might turn back. Report the mechanical problem. Let someone else handle it. Vratsiu keeps climbing. Then he sees them, a massive formation of Japanese aircraft stretching across the sky. Yokosuka Judy dive bombers carrying bombs, Zeros weaving through the formation as escorts. Vratsiu dives. He picks out a Judy at the back and opens fire. The bomber explodes. He pulls up, rolls, acquires another target. Another Judy comes apart. A third, a fourth, a fifth. The formation breaks up. Japanese bombers scatter in all directions, jettisoning their bombs into the sea. Vratsiu stays with them. He lines up a 6th Judy and presses the trigger. The bomber's bomb detonates in midair. The explosion is so close that Vratsiu feels his Hellcat shudder from the blast. 6 kills in 8 minutes. When Vratsiu lands on the Lexington, he climbs out and looks up at Admiral Mitcher on the bridge. He holds up 6 fingers. Mitcher smiles. A photographer captures the moment. The image becomes one of the most famous photographs of the Pacific War. But WWII is just one pilot among hundreds. All across the sky, Hellcat pilots tear into the Japanese formations. Commander David McCampbell shoots down 7 aircraft that day. Other pilots return, refuel, rearm, and launch again. The Japanese keep coming. 4 waves of aircraft, one after another. Wave after wave is destroyed. By the end of June 19th, the Japanese have lost over 340 carrier aircraft. The Americans lost fewer than 30 Hellcats in air combat, better than 10 to 1. A shipmate of WWII's looks at the carnage and shakes his head. It was just like an old-time turkey shoot. The nickname sticks. The Battle of the Philippine Sea becomes known forever as the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. When the battle ends, the Japanese have lost over 600 aircraft and 3 carriers. Their naval air power is crippled beyond recovery. The psychological impact is as devastating as the physical losses. Japanese pilots who survive return with stories of unstoppable American fighters, of formations torn apart before reaching their targets, of friends dying by the dozens. The confidence that carried Japanese naval aviation since Pearl Harbor is shattered. 4 months later, the first organized kamikaze attacks begin. Because asking Japanese pilots to fight Hellcats in conventional combat is sending them to certain death. The F6F Hellcat remained in production until November 1945. In 30 months, Grumman built 12,175 aircraft. At peak production, one rolled off the assembly line every hour around the clock. Those aircraft flew 66,530 combat sorties. They destroyed 155 enemy aircraft in aerial combat. They lost 270 Hellcats in air-to-air combat. Kill ratio, 19 to 1. Against the Zero specifically, 13 to 1. 305 American pilots became aces flying the Hellcat, more than any other aircraft in American history. The Hellcat accounted for 75% of all Navy and Marine Corps aerial victories in World War II. Only 42 American bombers were lost to enemy aircraft while under Hellcat escort between 1943 and 1945. 42 aircraft in 2 years of combat. The Hellcat didn't just kill the enemy, it protected its own. David McCampbell finished the war with 34 confirmed victories, all in Hellcats. He received the Medal of Honor. He was the Navy's ace of aces. Alexander WWII ended the war with 19 kills. He was shot down over the Philippines in December 1944, not by an enemy fighter, but by anti-aircraft fire. He parachuted safely and fought alongside Filipino guerrillas for 5 weeks until American forces arrived. He died in 2015 at age 96. Robert Duncan, the pilot who scored the Hellcat's first kill against a Zero, finished with 7 victories. In 1998, more than 50 years later, he learned something astonishing. His second kill that morning had been Warrant Officer Sueda, a 9-victory ace. Duncan hadn't just defeated the climbing trap, he'd killed one of its masters. Final thoughts. The Zero was designed for offense, speed, climb, range, maneuverability, everything a pilot needed to find and destroy his enemies. But the men who designed it assumed their pilots would do the killing. They didn't plan for a war of attrition. They didn't plan for an enemy who could replace losses faster than they could inflict them. They didn't plan for the Hellcat. The Hellcat was designed for survival. Armor, firepower, ruggedness, simplicity, everything a pilot needed to fight, take damage, and come back to fight again. The nation that could keep its pilots alive, keep its aircraft flying, keep its factories producing, would eventually overwhelm the nation that could not. Japan lost that war long before the atomic bombs fell. They lost it over the Philippine Sea. They lost it in the factories of Bethpage, New York. They lost it in the training schools where American pilots received hundreds of hours of instruction while Japanese cadets were rushed to the front. The Hellcat didn't win the Pacific War by itself, but it made victory possible. Today, only 7 Hellcats remain airworthy. They appear at air shows, their Pratt & Whitney engines still roaring, their wings still casting shadows. At the National Naval Aviation Museum in Pensacola, a Hellcat painted in David McCampbell's markings sits on display. 34 small Japanese flags are painted on its fuselage. Each one represents a pilot who never came home. Each one represents a victory that helped end the war. The Hellcat was not the fastest fighter of World War II, not the most maneuverable, not the most technologically advanced, but it was the right aircraft at the right time, flown by the right pilots. And the Japanese pilots who faced it learned a simple truth that changed the Pacific War. The hunters had become the hunted. If this story reminded you why history matters, hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten stories from World War II. Subscribe to World War II Ember to stay connected with these untold histories. Each one matters. Each one deserves to be remembered. And leave a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from. Our community spans from veterans to history students, from Texas to Tokyo. You're part of something special here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for keeping these stories alive.